Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about discus pairs, angelfish pairs, and those kinds of cichlids that might pair up in your tank, and whether it's a good idea to continue to allow those fish to spawn in your tank, or if that is something that is not good. When we come back, we're going to talk about that. Hang in there with me. We'll be right back. Aquatic Concepts sponsors Project Piaba. Now, as I said in the intro, is it in the best interest of your community tank to allow discus who have paired up or angelfish that have paired up to continuously spawn and create an environment of stress for the rest of the fish in your tank? And the simple answer to that is no. But I want to explain to you why, because I don't like to just throw things out there and not give an explanation as to why I feel this way or why I know that this is not a good idea. The first thing that comes to mind is that in a discus tank in particular, there's a lot of territorial things that are going on all the time, a pecking order, so to speak, that takes place, and that in itself can be very stressful in a community tank of discus where you have lots of other kinds of fish in there. And I would suggest to you that if you see your discus pairing up, if you have no intentions of ever breeding those discus, first of all, you may get pairs that pair up that may not be qualifiers for breeding because of the colors. When discus pair up, they don't look at each other and say, okay, you look a lot like me or whatever, let's get together. That's not how it happens. It's basically you get a male and a female that just tend to pair off for whatever reason, and a good percentage of the time they are not compatible as far as color, and they're not going to have offspring that are going to be something that you're going to want to send out into the world and have other people breeding as well. So what I like to do is not purity of lines necessarily. If you're playing around and you're trying to come up with something unique or whatever, and it's something that turns out to be beautiful fish, you can try all these things. But the bottom line is, in a community tank, if this kind of thing happens and you have no intention of breeding those discus fish, then what I would recommend to you is splitting up that pair. Now, you may not have the luxury of splitting up a pair because you don't have a home for the second fish that you're taking out of the tank, whether it be the male or the female. And the bottom line is that the best thing for you to do at that point is try to rehome that fish, simply because once they're paired up like that, they're not going to stop creating an environment in that tank where the territory for spawning is, it's almost going to always be exactly the same place unless you move things around in the tank. That's not going to stop them from spawning. It's just basically going to throw them off for a short period of time, and then they'll go right back to spawning as soon as they find a space that's suitable for the male and the female. And once you start watching them cleaning the spot, you know that they're getting ready to spawn again. Now, this can take place every 7 to 10 days basically, and it can be stimulated by lots of different things. Number one, just a simple water change. If you're intentionally trying to breed discus, of course, water changes are something that we do all the time anyway, but it can be as simple as a water change where the temperature of the water is up or down, and this can stimulate spawning. Also, types of food that you're feeding your fish in your community tank. If you're putting, for example, foods in there that are going to stimulate the discus to spawn, such as bloodworms, blackworms, anything that's live, they are going to take that as an opportunity to go ahead and spawn. The environment is going to be correct for them to do this. So what I would suggest to you, again, is if you're not intending on breeding these fish long term, and you want to create a different environment where they're not stressing out the rest of your tank. I don't know if you have watched this, but anytime you have a pair of discus that have spawned, any other discus that comes even close to that area is going to be run off, and there's going to be battles. And sometimes if the discus are the same size, they are going to really beat the crap out of each other, just simply because they're defending an area in which they're procreating, and to them that is like sacred territory to them in the tank. The other problem that you might have is if you have some smaller discus in that tank that are not going to be formidable when it comes to dealing with a pair of discus that are spawning. They can get hurt really severely and cause a lot of problems and even death sometimes. So you want to be careful that if you're not intentionally wanting to breed and you're continuously having this spawning activity going on in your community tank, it's best to either do one of two things. Like I said, take the male or the female out of there, whichever one you want. Typically, I would take the male out of there simply because there are less males generally than there are females in most of your tanks. And if you take the male out, then you're not going to have a situation where he just finds another female in the tank to pair up with, and the whole process starts over again. So getting the male out of the tank, and like I said, either putting it in another tank if you have one, is a great thing to do, or just simply rehoming that fish. Now, if this is a prized fish, you're going to have to make a decision on one of the two that are spawning, and or you're going to have to pay attention all the time that when they spawn that you're cleaning those eggs off, whatever it happens to be. Typically it's going to be something that's vertical, and it's going to be a branch or something of a piece of wood. Sometimes it's the tube that comes up from a filter that is in your tank, or I've even seen just the regular down intake on your filter that goes into your tank, where they will lay eggs constantly on that. And again, they will pick some place in the tank that is a favorite spot for them, and they will just continuously spawn over and over and over again. Now the same thing goes for angelfish. When angelfish pair up like this, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to spawn, but you're going to find that even angelfish can be a little bit more aggressive. They can be more aggressive than discus fish about their territory and be extremely, really cruel to the smaller fish that are in that community tank, such as tetras, even corydoras, any kind of fish that are going to come near that location and feel like there's a threat, then they are going to go after those fish. And I have seen in my tanks where I've had a pair spawn of angels, and I've come in the next morning to check on them and to see what was going on, and I found 4 or 5 dead tetras in my tank, because in the process they have basically so protected that territory that any fish that even wanders into that area, if they're caught off guard, they're going to get nailed, especially if they're larger angelfish. And the tetras are just not going to stand a chance here. They will kill them, and that is just part of the natural process of what goes on when fish spawn. So in summation here, what I would tell you is this: if you do end up with discus pairs or angelfish pairs that you never intend on breeding, I would split them up in your tank, simply because the environment and the stress that it can create, there's all kinds of things that can happen. There's diseases that can develop in some of your other fish when they're stressed out all the time. It is not good for harmony in the tank, And so getting them out of there and getting them into another tank or rehoming them is always the best option. I hope this was helpful for you. For those of you who have been asking me these questions on my Facebook page, I really appreciate it, because it is something that all of us deal with, and you really don't know sometimes what to do, because you want sometimes to maybe keep those two fish together because they are beautiful fish and they kind of make up the beauty of your tank. But the bottom line is that if this is going on, the stress and the disharmony that's going on in the tank is really something that you've got to put first and say to yourself, you know, I need to split these guys up, simply because they're not going to stop doing this. They're just not going to stop doing it. They're going to continue to spawn, and they're going to continue to create the environment where your fish are going to be stressed out all the time. And that's no fun, because basically you end up with fish that are timid, fish that are diseased, and things like that. And no one wants that. So I hope this, like I said, was helpful for you today. If you are intending on taking a pair of discus or angelfish, what you want to do is simply get yourself a 20-gallon that is well cycled and well developed, possibly a hospital tank that you can immediately turn over into a breeding tank. This is a perfect environment. There's a couple of videos that I will attach down at the bottom in the description area of breeding discus, and this will be helpful to you. But if you do have a 20-gallon and you want these guys to breed, buy yourself a ceramic cone online, or simply put a piece of slate or vertical anything in the tank basically, and they will go ahead and lay their eggs there, and you can start breeding your discus if you want to. But I advise all of you who are breeding discus to read up on it a little bit, watch some of the videos that I have that give you some real insight as to proper breeding and proper conditions for breeding, specifically discus fish. I have done this with angels as well, but I've focused more lately on the discus and the breeding of those guys more than anything. And I'm constantly getting new sources of fry and young discus that I'm constantly in grow out tanks and so forth. So it's a commitment. It's something that you're going to have to tell yourself that if you're going to do this and you're going to make a commitment to do it, it does take time, and it does take patience, and it does take a little effort on your part to do it correctly. So you're going to make mistakes along the way. We all do. You're not going to get discus necessarily that are going to move from your community tank into a breeder tank and immediately start laying eggs. It might take a few weeks for a spawn to take place, and they may eat those eggs, or they may eat hatched fry the first 2 or 3 times, because discus or angelfish are not always fantastic parents right off the bat. That's a whole nother video, as I said, and I will leave that down in the description area. There are some videos that I think you'll find of interest of mine on breeding pairs of discus and how to do that, what size tanks is best for them, and so forth, or what size tank is absolutely minimal to get these discus. I've seen people actually breed discus in 12 to 15-gallon tanks, small areas, and that's not something I would do. I have specifically 20-gallon perfectly square breeder tanks that I use for this, and that is my choice of the type of tank that I would use to breed discus. But again, getting back to the focus of this video, that is, if you have community tanks where you are having discus or angelfish pairing up, then you are having territorial issues and there's disharmony in your tank, you're going to have to split those guys up, because they're just going to keep spawning over and over and over again and creating, like I said, disharmony in your tank. And sometimes that leads to injuries, disease, and a lot of stress on the fish that is not necessary. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you for joining me. We will see you on the next one. Until then, we're out of here.